Hello, good day students. This pre-recorded lecture is prepared as part of our asynchronous learning. So welcome to the subject Theories of Crime Causation. Our topic for this video lecture will be the criminological theories under the biological perspective. So in the last lecture, we conducted synchronous learning through Google Meet. So in the last meeting, we discussed the criminological research or criminological theories rather under the rational choice perspective. Now, today in this video, we are going to discuss the different theories under the biological perspective. But before that, let us first have a short prayer.
Steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning, new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness, O Lord. Great is thy faithfulness. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning, new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness, O Lord. Great is thy faithfulness. They are new every morning, new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness, O Lord. Great is thy faithfulness.
Amen. So to proceed, students, so the first theory that we are going to discuss is the Lombrosian theory, a theory proposed by Dr. Cesar Lombroso, the father of modern criminology. So he believed that criminals are biologically different or biologically inferior human beings as compared to those that are non-criminals. So he believed that criminals are throwbacks or criminals possess inferior genetic that came from the ancestors of human beings. So he believed that criminals are throwback to a more primitive stage of human evolution, and the criminal tendency is inherited from generation to generation. So in Lombroso's view, criminal exhibit more physical and mental abnormalities than non-criminals, such as unusual skull sizes and asymmetrical facial structure. So, in the Lombrosian theory, students, he put more emphasis on the physical characteristics of the person rather than observing the behavioral traits, or rather than observing human behavior. He observed thousands of inmates or criminals and concluded that the criminals or those people who have criminal behavior or who possess criminal behavior are those persons who have the same abnormalities in their physical characteristics. So many of his theories were developed while he was in charge of the insane at the hospital in Italy. So he encouraged more humane treatment of convicts and work programs to help them become productive members of society. So one widely embraced his ideas about criminology have largely been discredited. Take note of that, students. The Lombrosian theory or the theory of ATAVISM, the which explains that criminals have or criminals possess this the same physical characteristics or these abnormal physical characteristics. So the word abnormal, student, is having yet to be judged because those are normal lang na siya, students. However, according to Sir Lombroso, those physical characteristics are rather abnormal because those characteristics are possessed by the insane, are possessed by the criminals during his time in Italy. So take note of that, students, that his theories are largely been discredited, meaning to say it have been criticized and have been rejected by the entire scientific community. However, students, also take note that Cesar Lombroso, or the Lombrosian theory, the theory of the positivist school of thought, is the first attempt of science, or is the first attempt of to explain, to study the scientific causes of crimes. That is why we are still discussing the Lombrosian theory, although discredited siya, although rejected siya by the majority of the scientific community. Ini siya ang pinakauna gid nga attempt or the pinakauna nga study, scientific study, to determine the causes of criminal behavior. Although the earliest theories of crime causation is demonology, as we have discussed in our previous discussion, but those theories under the demonological theories are not backed up by science or were not conducted in a scientific manner, or wala siya it was not adhered, or it did not adhere to the requirements for it to be considered as scientific. So the Lombrosian theory is the first theory which which adhered to the requirements of the scientific community nga para ma-considered siya nga scientific ang iya nga theory or research. So, what are the basic ideas of the Lombrosian theory or the positivist theory? So, he argued, or they proposed that criminals are born, not made. That criminal behavior is inherited from your parents or from your ancestors. So, this is an example of nature and not nurture. And it focused on biological and psychological factors to explain criminal behavior. So Lombroso developed the theory about born criminals in 3,000 anthropometric measurements. He found some biological traits of criminals. So ginstudihan niya class ang itsura, ang physical characteristics of 3,000 criminals or 3,000 convicts during his time when he was founded the positivist school of criminology. So, the biological traits of criminals, according to Lombroso, of course, have the unusual size or shape of the head, strange eyes, facial asymmetry, extended jaw and jawbone, too big or too small ears, full lips lean forward, abnormal teeth, wrinkled skin, nose curled up, thieves have a flat nose, according to him, and murderers have a big nose or matalong kuno ang ilong sang mga manugpatay tawo. So, too long, too small or flat nga chin, dark skin, and too long arms. So, here are example of the facial features of Lombroso's born criminal students. This looks normal according to the critics of the theory of Lombroso. This theory or the positivist theory of the born criminals will create hate crimes, it will create racism, and it will create stereotyping. This will result to a baseless accusations of many people who look like this or who possess the facial features that was described by Cesar Lombroso. So it was discredited and it was rejected by the majority of the scientific community. However, according to Lombroso, persons who have 5 or more biological traits that was mentioned previously are born criminals. Beside physical traits, Lombroso introduced some other trait of born criminals. So, miyara man siya kuno sang iya nga mga other than physical traits. The hypersensitivity to pain and touch, use of physical criminal slang, or the language that is known to criminals. If you are aware of that kuno, then you are a criminal according to him. Grotesque expression of thoughts, tattoos, and of course unemployment. And Lombroso later changed because of the kadamakmak na criticism regarding the born criminals. So he later changed the theory and nag-add siya and classified criminals into 3 categories. So first, of course, the born criminals, which is 30% of all criminals according to him. Second is the abnormal criminals. Those are the idiots, the imbeciles. Or when you say idiot and imbeciles, those are people which have the intellectual capacity of children, or ang ilang intellectual capacity does not go along with their physical growth or their age. I mean to say, you can be 40 years old but you can have the mind of a child. It do exist. Naga-exist na siya subong. That was classified. That was classified by Cesar Lombroso as abnormal criminals, paranoids, melancholics, paralytic, epileptics, demented persons, alcoholic, and hysterics. So according to him, the abnormal criminals are those type of criminals that have psychological abnormalities. And the third is the occasional criminals, which he further classified into 3 categories under the occasional criminals. The criminaloids, which have the difficulties during childhood, or those persons who have experienced childhood traumatic experiences or any traumatic experiences that would trigger criminal behavior. Next is the pseudo-criminals. Those are the insane persons or the persons who committed crimes due to self-defense. Meaning to say, they don't have the intention to commit crimes in the first place, but committed it due to self-defense or due to insanity. And we have the criminals out of habit. Those are people with poor education during their childhood, or who have been in social interaction with criminals, or shall we say that those were that socially influenced or influenced by the environment or his social life, or influence siya sa iya naman niya. It is a nurture nga influensyahan sa iya nga palibot. So next is of course the other theory under the positivist theory, the theory of atavism, or shall we call it the atavistic stigmata, or otherwise known as the evolutionary throwback. So the term emerged during the 1870 in the Italian School of Criminology. So during this time, criminology studies were largely an extension of medical studies. So based on observable physical and anatomical characteristics that made these individuals different from others. So when say atavistic stigmata or evolutionary throwback, this means that criminals possess the genetics of our ancestors according to that theory. Ancestors which are those the Homo sapiens, the Homo habilis, or the primitive type or breed of humans nga kuno from those type nga of human beings, or from those inferior evolution or mga Homo habilis, may ara pa kuno sang genes nga halin didto sa ila nga na-pass down from generations to the present generations. So, and it is obvious kuno through physical traits or through physical characteristics. So these physical traits were correlated to earlier humans long before humans learned that living together in societies was beneficial to their survival. The physical characteristics such as flat nose, large lips, strong jawlines, and thick coarse hair were all attributed to a person's propensity to commit crime because these characteristics were noted of persons who had already been convicted of crimes, specifically prisoners. So those type of theories, the positivist theory and the theory of atavism, only base their conclusion and their findings of their research and their study based on those persons who already committed the crime and presumed that they can predict or they can identify a would-be criminal even before he committed a crime based on those physical characteristics nga usual nila nakikita sa mga tao nga who already committed crimes, which is wrong, students, which have been discredited up to this modern day, which according to many criminologists, social scientists, that this theory, of course, as I've said earlier, will create hate crimes, more hate crimes against Black Americans, against Asians, against us, against other races other than the Western or the races from Western countries, from European countries. So, as you can see, the description of the born criminals can be seen from other races other than the Europeans, other than the races from the Western countries. So as you can see, these traits can be seen from Africans, from Asians, and many more. So it will create hate crimes, racial crimes. It will create racism, and of course, it will create division. It will create ano siya it will break unity from sa isa ka country. So with that, students, we are done with the positivist and the theory of atavism. I will give this activity to you before we move forward. So in this activity, you will look on the internet about the given genetic lineage. So kindly write a reaction paper in relation to the following. Kindly write your answers in freehand or handwritten. So good luck. Kindly use a separate sheet of paper. So same form of submission, you're going to write your answers in a separate sheet of paper, and then photograph your answer and send it to me directly to my messenger, to my Facebook account nga ga-contact sa inyo. So you are going to have a research on the Kalikak family tree, the Jukes family tree, and of course, the legend of Sonny Bean's family tree. So, the first two families or the first two family trees are confirmed to be real. They are real persons. They are real genetic lineage. The third, however, is in between reality and fiction. There has been no confirmed evidence of the existence of this Sonny Bean's family tree. That's why we put it as the legend of the Sonny Bean's family tree. So there's been no concrete evidence of the existence of this family tree, and also there has been no concrete evidence that would say that they did not existed at all. So it is in the middle of reality, and fiction. However, you are still going to have a reaction paper regarding that family tree. So in case you have a question regarding this activity, kindly ask your question sa group chat naton para ma-answer naton kag makita man sa inyong classmate in case they will have the same question. So moving forward, students, we have the biological determinism. So biological determinism, student, is the idea that an individual's characteristic and behavior are dictated by some aspect of biology, like genes. Same with the theory of atavism. So biological determinists believed that environmental factors have no influence on a person. According to biological determinists, social categories like gender, race, sexuality, and disability are based on biology, and this justifies the oppression and control of specific groups of people. So, this perspective implies that an individual's path in life is determined from birth and therefore that we lack free will. Same with the theory of atavistic stigmata and theory of the same with the positivist theory. It also creates hate crimes. It also creates racial crimes and racism. So, this biological determinism, students, is a theory used to suppress, to control a group of people. This has been this can be used as an excuse from an oppressive government or by a dictator or something, or in order to control a specific race, or in order to oppress a specific race. Magambal siya nga, you belong in that race, you belong in that nationality. So based on your lineage, genetic lineage, you are savages, you are violent. So therefore, you have to do this, you have to do that. You are not allowed to do this, you are not allowed to do that. These are the drawbacks of this type of biological theories. So, to proceed, so what are the key takeaways of biological determinism? So it is the idea that biological attributes such as one's genes dictates one's destiny, and they say that you have no other choice but to go along with it, that you have no free will because you already possess the genetic lineage of a violent creature or a violent criminal. So you will go along with it because that is your destiny. That is wrong, students. That is we cannot say totally that is wrong, and we cannot say totally that is correct. But there has been hundreds and thousands of criticisms from this biological determinism, and there has been an unending debate between the nurture and the nature argument or debate on the causes of crimes, whether or not the causes of crime has been caused by biological or genetic lineage, or biological causes, or whether or not criminal behavior has already been embedded or has already been hardwired in our genes as a human beings, or whether or not the criminal behavior is learned, or whether or not criminal behavior has been or criminal behavior is an influence, or a social influence, or an influence, environmental influence. So an ending debate between the two. So we cannot say that this is wrong, this is correct, because they have their own arguments. They have their own scientific researches. But we are going to study them both in this subject. According to this, environmental, social, and cultural factors play no role in shaping an individual. And biological determinism has been used to uphold white supremacy and justify racial, gender, and sexual discrimination, as well as other biases against various groups of people, students. And I have one takeaway for you for this biological determinism. We have this type of topic in the psychological theories of crime causation. When we go to psychopathy, when we go to sociopathy, we are going to study um, serial killers, serial rapists, genocidal maniacs. We are going to study their profiles. Now, I have one takeaway for you regarding this racial discrimination. We had this in the US, in the United States of America. They had this killer. They had this Zodiac killer, as they call him, because gapamatay siya sa mga couples nga naga-date. For example, nagapamatay siya random. He kills people for unknown reason. He kills people in in a manner that if you are the investigator, you cannot create a profile for him because he will have different victims. He have no, wala siya sang specific types of victims. Now, there has been a night nga may ginpatay siya. And then, may nagtawag karon 911 nga nagtawag nga emergency. There has been a person who had been shot and killed sa iyang salakyan karon. And then, the police officers already assumed that they were looking for a black American. And then when nagresponde sila dito sa site, may nasugata silang isa ka lalaki nga white American nga nasugata nila, and then wala nila ginsapak because they thought that the killer is a black American or isang African American. So in that night, they failed to arrest the murderer or the killer because of this racial discrimination or this racial labeling of races nga kuno abi nga because of this biological determinism and that atavistic stigmata that white people are supreme, that white people are superior in their genes, in their physical characteristics, that other races are deemed to be inferior to them. So that is just a takeaway for our future discussion. So although the theory has been scientifically discredited, the idea that differences between people are based in biology still persists in various forms. So let us proceed now to eugenics. So no overview of biological determinism would be complete without discussing one of its most well-known movements, the eugenics, that was proposed or founded by Francis Galton, a British naturalist, originated the term in 1883. So, like the social Darwinist, his ideas were influenced by the theory of natural selection. Yet, while social Darwinists were willing to wait for survival of the fittest to do its work, eugenicists wanted to push the process along. For example, Galton championed planning breeding among desirable races and preventing breeding among less desirable races. These eugenic students, the theory of eugenic students, only wants to continue the superior races or the races with superior genetics, according to him, and stop the production or the reproduction of the less superior or the inferior races, the less desirable races, in order to eliminate the genetic defects that human beings possess. So, eugenicists believe that the spread of genetic defects, especially intellectual disabilities, was responsible for all social ills in the 1920s and 1930s. So, the movement used IQ tests to sort people into intellectual categories, with those scoring even slightly below average were labeled genetically disabled. If you fail the IQ test, you will be labeled as genetically disabled, meaning to say you possess inferior genetics. So eugenics was so successful that in the 1920s, the American states began to adopt sterilization laws. Eventually, more than half of the states had a sterilization law on the books. These laws mandated that people who were pronounced genetically unfit in institutions must be subjected to mandatory sterilizations. By the 1970s, thousands of American citizens have been involuntarily sterilized. Those in other countries were subjected to similar treatment, meaning to say, when you say sterilization, your capacity to reproduce, to naturally reproduce, was taken away from you. You cannot reproduce. Hindi ikaw kabata. The reason for this, according to the eugenics movement, is to discontinue, to eliminate entirely the genetic defects that human beings possess. So is this familiar for the fans of the Attack on Titan? So as a spoiler for you, so a spoiler warning, in the Attack of Titans, they have this sterilization plan to sterilize or to stop the entire Eldian people to reproduce, because for the hundred of years, Titans will be eliminated totally sa kalibutan. So that is a spoiler for you. So to proceed, next is heritability of IQ. So why eugenics is now criticized on moral and ethical grounds, the interest in creating a link between intelligence and biological determinism persists. For example, in 2013, the genomes of high intelligent individuals were being studied in China as a means to determine the genetic basis for intelligence. Mga maalam kuno nga tawang ila kuno nga genes has been studied in order to determine whether if those highly intelligent individuals possess something different as compared to those the average and the below average individual. So the idea behind the study was that intelligence must be inherited and therefore established at birth. Meaning to say, there has been attempt to modify genes or to have a genetically modified human beings nga para kuno nga instead of eliminating inferior genetics to discontinue nga magdamo sila, why not study kuno the highly intelligent individuals, the genes of the highly intelligent individuals, and make it as a modification for the unborn babies nga ihatag kuno dito. However, no scientific studies have shown that specific genes result in a specific degree of intelligence. In fact, when a relationship between genes and IQ has been demonstrated, the effects on is limited to just an IQ point or two. Meaning gamay, there's been a little difference. If you compare, if you study the relationship between IQ and genetics. So on the other hand, one's environment, including educational quality, has been shown to influence IQ by 10 or more points. So that is 1 point for social influence or environmental influence, because according to the study, that the higher or the higher the quality of the educational institution, or the higher the quality of the of education in that area in that country, the higher is the influence to the IQ as compared to the influence of genetics to IQ. So that is one point for the sociological influence to human behavior. So next is gender. So biological determinism has also been applied to ideas about sex and gender, particularly as a way to deny specific rights to women. For instance, in 1889, Patrick Gids and Arthur Thompson claimed that metabolic state was the source of various traits in men and women. Women were said to conserve energy, while men expend energy. As a result, women are passive, conservative, and lack interest in politics. Therefore, they were not permitted to vote. Bawal sila magbuto during that time. They were not given the right to vote, whereas men are the opposite. So these biological facts were used to prevent the extension of political rights to women. During that time in the 1889, because of this biological determinism, women stayed in their homes doing household chores. They were not given the right to work and earn a living. They were not given the right to vote, and they were not given the right to run for public office because of this biological determinism. Next, let us proceed to the somatotyping theory. So this somatotyping theory are a set of generalized body types. So as you can see, there are three general body types. Psychologist William Sheldon came up with somatotypes in the 1940s, and they were one of the biological theories developed in this time period that attempted to explain and predict crime based on person's body type. So these body types broke down into three categories: the ectomorphs, the endomorphs, and the mesomorph. Ni Wang Tambok Masculado. Sheldon developed these categories based on existing knowledge at the time on how embryos develop in layers, namely the inner layer, the endoderm, and the middle layer or the mesoderm, and the outer layer or the ectoderm. So generally speaking, ectomorphs are thin and slender and may appear fragile, ang mga maniwang kuno. Endomorphs are round and solid and often appear overweight, like sa akon. Endomorph are round, and mesomorphs tend to have developed muscles and appear strong and powerful. Now here are the three male body types, or the three body types under the somatotyping theory: the ectomorph, the and mesomorph, and the endomorph. So how does the body types kuno influence behavior? So ectomorph focused on nervous system and the brain. They are thin, tall, soft, frail body, very little body fat, and lack of muscle. The mesomorph are rectangular shape, muscular body, little body fat, great posture, thick skin. Endomorph focus on digestive system, particularly the stomach or the endodem. The round shape, soft body, has more body fat, wide hips. So how does the body type influence behavior? The ectomorphs are more likely to be artistic according to this theory, students. Take note, again, according to the somatotyping theory. Ectomorphs, ang mga maniwang kuno, are more likely to be artistic and self-conscious about themselves. They are likely to be more sensitive as well. They tend to be more antisocial as compared to the other two. So mesomorphs are more likely to be more active as well as energetic. They are also very muscular, causing them to be more assertive, aggressive, and violent. They like to be adventurous, to take risks, or chances. That is why the mesomorphs are those people kuno nga are likely to be involved in trouble or accidents. And the endomorph students are those more likely to be physically bigger and have greater body fat percentage. They consist of being well behaved, with the love of food and the loving personality. They are relaxed and both tolerant and sociable, according to the somatotyping theory. So, to proceed, let us proceed to the biosocial theory. So, the biosocial theory students, the Lombroso's manuscript, The Criminal Man, is perhaps the most famous of these early efforts to draw the direct link between biology and crime. So, a professor of medicine at the University of Turin, Lombroso conducted his research in the Italian prison system. As part of his work, he collected detailed anatomical measurements of prisoners and compared them with measurements taken from ordinary Italian citizens. According to Lombroso, criminals taken certain physical characteristics, or itong hambal takagina, they possess common physical characteristics, so that distinguish them from ordinary citizens. In sum, he argued that criminals were atavists, or biological throwbacks to an earlier period of human evolution. So he further maintained that these atavists engaged in criminal activity, including violence, because it was instinctive for them to do so. Finally, because they are the product of biological forces, Lombroso felt that criminals lack free will and are thus not morally responsible for their actions, because this biosocial theory believes in destiny, that once you possess a genetic anomaly or genetic inferiority or genetic defect, you have no choice but to act instinctively in a certain situation that would lead to the commission of crimes. Next, the biochemical conditions of crime. So, let us go out with genetics. Let us go with the biochemical conditions. Let us go to the diet, the hormonal influence, and of course, allergies. Some biosocial theorists believe that biochemical conditions, including this acquired through diet, can control or influence violent behavior. Biochemical factors that might influence aggression range from nutrition to allergies. So first, we have nutritional deficiencies. We have hormonal influences. And third, we have allergies. So let us proceed to the exposure to environmental contaminants as part of the biochemical conditions of crime. So, social biological scholars have also drawn a connection between exposure to dangerous contaminants, including copper, mercury, chlorine, artificial coloring, food dyes, etc., and both aggressive and antisocial behavior. So, a great deal of recent research has focused on the possible relationship between lead poisoning and violence. This means that criminal behavior or human behavior can be influenced by environmental contaminants that nga magsulod sa aton lawas, that would poison our of course genes man japon, that would influence our um, behavior. So, in the study of, in a number of study, have also found that lead poisoning is one of the most significant predictors of male delinquency and persistent adult criminality. And a study conducted by Needleman in 1996, for example, tracked several hundred boys from ages 7 through 11 and found that those with high concentrations of lead in their bones were much more likely to demonstrate attention deficit problems, poor language skills, delinquency, and aggression. High lead ingestion is also linked to lower IQ scores, a factor that can contribute to youth violence. So we'll skip that. So let us proceed with the fetal alcoholic syndrome, or FAS. So fetal alcoholic syndrome develops when fetuses are exposed to high level of alcohols in the wound, or while they are in the embryo, or kung fetus pa lang sila, kung heavy drinker kuno ang ilang mother nga gabusong sa ila. So these children subsequently demonstrate developmental delays and deviant behavior, including violence. So common cognitive problems associated with FAST, including learning difficulties, poor impulse control, or miyara sila sang bad temper, a need for immediate gratification, madasig nga pagkakuha sa ila gusto, speech problems, and the inability to consider the long-term consequences of one's action. Next, we have minimal brain dysfunction, or MBD. So it is related to abnormalities in cerebral structure. So it is a most serious form. The MDB is associated with severe antisocial behavior, including hyperactivity, poor attention span, temper tantrums, and aggressiveness. So next is ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So which we will have a more deeper discussion in the next chapter. But for the sake of the topic ADHD, medical estimates, or medicine estimates suggest that between 3 and 5% of children, most often males, suffer from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or the lack of attention span, or lack of attention, or lack of focus to something. So in fact, ADHD is the most common reason that children are referred to mental health clinics. The suspected causes of this disability include neurological damage, prenatal stress, food allergies, and genetics. Research has also found a strong relationship between ADHD and poor school performance, bullying, and a lack of response to punishment. So we will skip that. So let us proceed to genetics and violence. So the first criminologists, of course including Cesar Lombroso, often believed that antisocial behavior had a genetic basis. In other words, they believe that, of course, they believe in the born criminals, as discussed earlier. So this early work have been thoroughly discredited by enlightened thinkers. However, in the 1960s, the debate over genetics and violence emerged once again, and much of this revival centered on the famous XYY controversy, or the theory of the XYY. So, the normal chromosomal pattern for males is X and Y. However, some males in the general population, according to this theory, possess an extra Y chromosome. That is why this theory is called XYY chromosome. Many came to believe that these XYY males were much more aggressive and stronger than normal males who only possess the X and Y chromosomes, and often engage in serious violence, including a homicide. So this led to suggestions that XYY males should be identified at birth and thoroughly monitored by the state in order to prevent violence. However, research eventually found that most violent offenders, including the majority of serial killers, did not have an extra Y chromosome. So, with that, the interest in the XYY theory subsequently diminished. Nonetheless, a number of contemporary scholars remain highly interested in genetics. Some biosocial theorists, for example, have gone so far as to state that certain violent personality traits, including psychopathy, may be inherited. So, evolution and violence, students. So, the last topic. So, the final biosocial theory to consider is based on ideas about human evolution. Experts in this field argued that as human beings evolved, certain traits, emotions, and characteristics became genetically ingrained. Jealousy, for example, as a human emotion that may have evolved in order to keep families together and increase the probability of reproduction. So evolutionary theory has often been used to explain gender differences in both violent behavior and sexual activity. According to some evolutionary theorists, in order to ensure their genetic legacy, it is advantageous for males in the past, students of course, to mate with as many females as possible. On the other hand, because of the physical toll of a long gestation period, it is advantageous for females to mate with only few males, especially those who are thought to be nurturing or carrying the best genetic material. Because of these different mating strategies between male and female, it has been argued that the most aggressive males or the most dominant males have historically been able to mate with the largest number of women. Pinakamakusog, pinakamabaskog, pinaka-aggressive, pinaka-dominant nga male. For an evolutionary perspective, violence is thought to have developed as a male reproductive strategy because it can, first, eliminate or deter genetic competition or to prevent rival males from getting the opportunity to mate. Second, serve as a method for displaying physical strength or genetic superiority and attracting females. So deter females from living and mating with other males. In our distant past, therefore, male aggression may have frequently lead to reproductive success. If so, aggressive traits would be more likely than passive traits to be passed on to the next generation of males. Thus, it is often assumed by biosocial experts that the descendants of aggressive males account for the fact that even in modern society, men continue to be more violent as compared to women. So, the same in the animal kingdom, students. In lions, for example, the leader of the pride or the most dominant male. So, as the most dominant male or the most dominant male of the pride, they can have the opportunity to mate with all lioness or the opportunity to have sex or to mate with the female lions. Same with the crocodiles. Same with the pack of wolves. The alpha male will have the opportunity. So that is why, students, in the animal kingdom, we can have these challenges to become the dominant male, or we have these challenges, we have this ordeal. The alpha male or the alpha wolf, for example, or the leader of the pride, the lion, will have to face the challenges from either the inside sa iyang pride or from outside nga mga males nga mag-take over sa iya posisyon as the dominant male. So same with this theory, this theory of evolution and violence says that in the past, the most dominant male can have the opportunity to mate with the most number of females, thus passing the genes with the which contains the aggressive behavior, the violent behavior that has been passed down up to the modern man or to the modern society. So so that ends our lecture, students, for this chapter. So I will leave this activity to you. Activity number 2, for oral recitation on October 28, 2021. Question number 1, students. Should scientists continue looking for biological causes of criminality? Could such research be attacked on grounds that it promotes racist, sexist, or class-based stereotypes? Support your answer. Take note for oral recitation, but the first activity will be written and submitted to me. Question number 2. The scientific method has been applied to the study of crime since Lombroso. What would it mean to the study of crime if we adopted the approach recommended by constitutive criminology and abandoned traditional empirical methods? Third, explain the concept of somatotyping theory by William Sheldon. Do you think his explanation regarding body types and behavior is accurate? What would it mean for the general public if scientists pursue and accept the ideas proposed under the somatotyping theory? Fourth, is there any relationship between IQ and crime? What do you think is the contribution of intelligence to crime? Explain your answer. And last question, what can you say about eugenics? Do you think it is beneficial for a country or state to stop and prohibit a person with inferior genetics to reproduce? Explain your answer. That is for the oral recitation on October 28, 2021. So, or next Thursday. So, thank you very much. This ends our lecture. I hope that you and your family are safe as we are in a global pandemic. I am hoping to see you in a face-to-face class in the future, or I'm hoping to see you face-to-face in the future, healthy and well. Thank you very much. Keep safe and thank you.